This Zero Now program is brought to you with the support of our founding partners.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Zero Now's Fall Innovation Showcase, where partners, innovative technology companies showcase their latest advancements in school safety technology. This is really the opportunity that we have to share with you some of the new tools of the trade and best practices when it comes to technology. Just for those of us joining us for the first time, Zero Now is a stakeholder alliance formed to drive ideas, innovation, and investment to advance school safety. As a membership-based nonprofit, Zero Now facilitates collaboration between industry, association, and education partners to foster new solutions to keep our schools safe and secure. And the format today, just to give you a quick heads up, we're going to have three presentations from three of our partners, Evolv, Eastern DataComm, and CrisisGo. And as participants, you have an opportunity to ask questions by hitting the Q&A button on your screen to ask questions of our presenters. The videos and the recording of this will be available in the Zero Now community under the respective partners section of the Zero Now community. Without further ado, I will introduce our first guest presenter, Paul Jenny from Eastern DataComm. Welcome, Paul. I will turn it over to you, and we'd love to hear more about Eastern DataComm and your services and products and how you're helping advance school safety.
Thank you very much, Aaron, and thank everybody for joining. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be a part of the Zero Now organization. Just a little bit about Eastern DataComm. We've been in business since 1988, so we just actually completed our 36th year in business. We actually didn't start in school safety years ago. We were, as our name DataComm says, we were a data communications company doing routers and network switches and infrastructure and all that kind of stuff to improve communications for businesses and organizations all around, really the Northeast area. We've been actually working with schools, K through 12 and higher ed in particular, well, K through 12 in particular, as well as higher ed and some municipalities for over 20 of those years. And actually how we got involved in working with schools was by installing phone systems. And again, we were a communications company. We got involved in installing phone systems for schools. And then that led us into other types of communication solutions like paging and intercom systems, bell controllers and clocks. All of these technologies are pretty interrelated. And that was something that we were always fond of doing many years ago, is how not just putting a phone system in, but connecting it with these other technology solutions, understanding that multiple pieces working together gives you a better result when it comes to your ability to communicate effectively. We actually didn't get into school safety until shortly after the Sandy Hook shooting up in Newtown, Connecticut. And the only reason why we got involved with that is we had actually a number of our school clients came to us at the time and said, hey, can you guys help us out with an emergency notification solution? Because back then there really wasn't as much stuff on the market. So we said, well, sure, we could help you with developing an emergency notification system, but before we do that, we first have to understand, what the problem is. What is the challenge that school districts face in the event of an emergency, like an active shooter event or something like Sandy Hook? And then we eventually developed now what we call our LENS solution, which stands for Lockdown Emergency Notification System. And we developed that. And really what we tried to do is to have a solution that would really get the communication out as quickly and as effectively as possible. While we were working with a lot of school safety experts and police, we actually learned there's really three main principles that a good emergency notification system really should do in order for it to be effective in an emergency event, whether it's an active shooter event or even something more common like, whether it's bullying or student violence or an angry parent or things like that. You really need to make sure the system follows these three principles, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. The other thing we wanted to do is to make sure that these solutions also integrate with other technologies that schools have. When we were tying phone systems to the paging system, we understood that emergency notification should tie into those solutions as well, and as well as other pieces of technology like video surveillance and access control, with the idea that the sum becomes greater than, or the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. So a lot of schools that we find is they have a lot of different technologies that they keep in different silos, and they're really not working together or not very congruent. So we really try to tie all of these systems together so it's one overall solution. So starting with the phone system, maybe layering on paging or intercom on top of that, and then layering on emergency notification, and then tying that with other solutions, like I mentioned, like access control and video surveillance. So it's one overall solution. I mentioned three principles that we developed our solution by, and I think it's important for people to think about that when they're looking at their districts today to say, are we safe? Are we doing what we can do to ensure that everybody gets the notification? And that's something that we really took to heart is when that notification goes out, it really has to be addressed to 100% of the people on school grounds, particularly you're talking about an active shooter event. It's one thing you want to obviously notify first responders, but you need to ensure that 100% of the student, staff on school grounds, both inside and outside the building, are also notified immediately because they need to follow whatever procedures you have in place to get them to a safe place or a safe position when there's an emergency within on the campus. So the three principles we actually discovered that we developed our solution around was the first one being the 20-second rule. And the first time I actually heard this was from a state trooper in New Jersey. He says, if you see a guy with a gun or you see a threat within 20 seconds or less, you've got to get that notification out because every second counts. The second principle we learned is you need to automate the notification process as much as possible, taking the human element out of it. So a lot of schools we still talk to today rely on that human element, somebody to pick up a microphone or a phone and make a manual announcement, letting people know that there's a threat or there's a lockdown. Well, that might work in a drill, but if you're in a real crisis situation, a lot of times people might panic and maybe not do the right thing. So we really want to try to automate that process as much as possible. And the last principle was you want to ensure the notification covers the entire school property, not just inside the building, but outside the building as well. So these are the three principles that we developed our solution around. And we also wanted to tie it into with a lot of other systems technologies that a school district already has in place. So I figure what might be good to really showcase what we do is the demo. And behind me, we actually have our demo room here in our office in Hackensack, New Jersey. So I'll just kind of demonstrate how it all looks and how it ties together. This is a very, very short and condensed version of it, but hopefully it gives you an idea of what we're talking about. So the first part I talked about was the phone system. So this phone right here represents a classroom phone. So we're going to say this is classroom room 233. A lot of times phones in the classroom are next to the classroom door. Maybe they're on the teacher's desk. Either way, that's what this phone represents. This phone over here would represent an administrator's phone. So maybe the administrator sitting at their desk, okay? The second component to the overall solution would be the school's paging system. So that speaker right up there represents the school's PA system. So don't think of that as one speaker. Think of that all the speakers throughout your building, both inside and outside. And like I said, we'll tie the phone system to the PA so you can pick up any phone and make an announcement from anywhere within the building. Then we layer on emergency notification on top of that, which is part of our lens solution, which involves things like LED beacons and LED signboards. We actually have a few different types of signboards here that get tied into this overall solution. This is a signboard that has only one purpose, but to display an emergency message, which you'll see in a moment. This is actually a little bit more of a modern one that we were working with, actually with a clock company, where this obviously gives you a digital readout of a clock. This could go into a classroom, kind of make you, a future-ready school is a little bit more modern, where you can actually have the school logo. You have different messagings that you can put out. And this is what we would put out to the classroom. And it could also do emergency messages as well when I demonstrate that in just a moment. The other part of our emergency notification system, which you don't see here, is we have a wireless component to it. So if you think about big high schools that have remote ball fields and areas that are far away from the building, where even a paging speaker like that may not be able to reach the announcement, we can put wireless speaker horns in some of those remote areas to ensure when the announcement plays, everybody's going to hear it. So you have LED beacons and signboards inside the building in loud areas, and as well as in the exterior of the building to give you a visual cue, and then you'll have the audible cue over the paging system, as well as those wireless speakers in the outside. And we can also notify via calls to desk phones, cell phones, PC pop-ups, emails, text messages, multiple ways of getting the notification out. Now, how to activate the system, there's a few ways you can do it. One way is by putting in lockdown buttons. I like these buttons here where you press the button and everything is automated. Very easy, very little training you have to provide for your staff. But the other way we can also do it is tying the phone system in, where you could dial a code on the phone and it would activate the system in the event of an emergency. The benefit of that is now you're utilizing that existing technology that you already have in your school building. So if your school, let's say, has 80 phones, Well, guess what? Now you have 80 emergency buttons that we can utilize that infrastructure in conjunction with any hardwired buttons. And it also can be activated through an app on a smart device. So I'm going to demonstrate it real quick. So, we talked to schools today, if I'm a teacher in a classroom and that teacher looks out the window and sees a guy with a gun or a threat that warrants emergency notification, what does that look like? Well, most schools tell us that teacher would either make an announcement over the phone, over the PA system, if they're empowered to do so, which I'm not sure how many teachers would feel comfortable with that. Or they're going to call the main office, and the main office would put the school in lockdown or send out the emergency or shelter in place or whatever that might be. The problem with that is it introduces the human element. There's too much human interaction with that. You never know in the event of a crisis. What if the main office is the first area that gets compromised? So we really want to automate that process. So with our solution, you can just dial a code on the phone and it would activate the system within seconds. So in that same example, I'm a teacher. I look out the window and say, oh no, there's a guy with a gun. I come to the phone, I dial the code, and now it's going to activate the system within seconds. 3, 2, 1. So we'll have calls that are going to go out over to the police.
The system has been activated.
So it's calling the police and everything else is going to be activated in a second here.
Lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. This is a lockdown emergency. Please enter into lockdown mode. Move quickly to a secure location and follow our lockdown procedures. Lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. This is a lockdown emergency. Please enter into lockdown mode. Move quickly to a secure location and follow our lockdown procedures.
So forget 20 seconds with it. Oh yeah, here's the message here too.
Attention, this is the Eastern DataComm lens system calling. A lockdown was generated from extension 233. Please follow our lockdown procedures.
So within seconds, we're getting that notification out. It's sending the message out over the PA system. The lights are flashing. The police, first responders are being called. Obviously, multiple ways of getting that message out. So just to kind of sum it up, and I know I'm just about out of time here, what Eastern DataComm brings to the table is tying in all these systems together. We do everything from phone systems for schools to paging and intercom systems, emergency notification, video surveillance, access control, cellular repeaters, and all the infrastructure that makes all that stuff work. Because a lot of times when we work with clients, we might find out, yeah, we want to put an emergency notification system, but their PA system has got a lot of dead zones. It's not working very well. Well, we can help them upgrade that and then tying all these systems together to work in unison as one overall solution.
No, that's awesome. Thank you, Paul. And very integrated. And that's what's key. And we always talk about Zero Now is interoperability and the ability to, it's about prevention. How do you prevent harm in the first place? Obviously, before someone even attempts to cause any sort of threat or harm. But once a threat is detected, how quickly can we notify people, get people out of harm's way? And so, and I noticed that we're having an issue with the Q&A, so people may not be able to ask questions, but I do have some other questions that came in prior, and some questions I already have. So first of all, Paul, I mean, this is awesome. So is Eastern Datacom a software company, a hardware company? So what components of this is native to Eastern Datacom? Are you the software that's powering all these the different technologies in the background?
So we're actually what we call an integrator. So we the lens solution that I mentioned before is the only solution that we actually developed ourselves. But we are an integrator, which means that we install other phone systems. Meaning there's you've heard of Cisco or Mitel or Avaya. Like we actually sell Mitel and Zoom for phones. We sell Bogan for paging systems. So it's other manufacturers that are installing these or manufacturing these systems. We're the ones who design it, install it, and support it for our clients. Our lens solution actually is hardware based, not software based. I'm glad you brought that up. When we actually developed it, even though a lot of things is software driven nowadays, when we developed our lens solution, we didn't want to have the core of the system to be running on software on a server or in the cloud. We actually developed to be a piece of hardware that we actually have hardwired connections to the phone system, the paging system, and access control, and a few other systems there, at least at the core of it. And the idea behind it is if the power were to go out the building or the network were to go down and you lost internet, you could still press that button. It would still activate the system, and it would still obviously make the calls go out and all the lights flash. We do utilize software as an additional component for the notification items that's utilizing from a lot of the manufacturers that we sell. So, for example, some of the communication, like the calls that go out, could be a function of the phone system or a function of video surveillance and some of the other systems that we're a part of. But we really work on integrating, and in some cases, we're working with other people's paging systems sometimes. So, well, we just put a new paging system in 2 years ago. It's working great. All right, great. We'll integrate with what you already have into our system. But most of those integrations that we're talking about are actually hardware integrations or physical.
And so what does a typical client engagement look like? I mean, because obviously there's a lot going on in how do you help a school district or a school prioritize where they should start? Like, what is the starting point with your solutions typically?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do complimentary school safety assessments for school. Whether they work with Eastern DataComm or not, we'll give them that assessment, and we look at all the different technologies that they have and let them know, here's what you're doing well, here's what's doing good, keep this, and here's maybe where you have some deficiencies. And then we'll make a decision or recommendations to them of where they should probably start. So, for example, emergency notification is great, but if your PA system is terrible and you got dead zones throughout the building, the first area that you may want to tackle is actually upgrading your PA system to make sure you have good coverage throughout the building. So that might be the first area that we recommend. Every school is different. Some schools get a grant and they have flush with cash, and now they want to do a whole bunch of stuff. Great, but most of the time, schools have to do things over a few multiple budget cycles. And our view of it is doing something now is better than not doing anything at all. So let's figure out a 3, 4, or 5-year plan and say, okay, let's start with where you're most efficient at, and let's upgrade some of that, and then we can move on in subsequent years. One of the interesting things that we find all the time is a lot of times some of these upgrades that you do, like, for example, the PA system, it's something that schools seem to neglect for many years or sometimes decades. And you have these systems that are kind of band-aid together. And now they realize, gosh, that's a big component of school safety. We do an upgrade to that. And now they're thinking, wow, we should have done this years ago. The PA system, we're upgrading it for school safety. But man, we use this technology every single day, and it just improves the day-to-day communications as well. So that's really what we try to is give you that holistic approach to say, hey, how can we tie all these systems together and give you kind of a broader picture and not only help you for school safety, but also improving a lot of this technology that helps you on a day-to-day basis. And I think schools get a lot of benefit from that.
No, absolutely. And we are out of time, Paul, but I really appreciate the demonstration and the integration and interoperability that's absolutely critical. So just a reminder with folks so this video will be available in the Zero Now community a week from today, if not sooner, but also be in the Eastern DataComm section of the community. So thank you very much, Paul. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Art. Thank you, everybody.
Excellent. Our next guest is Jill Lemon from Evolv Technology, the new VP of Education. Welcome, Jill.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to share in a little different format. I actually have a PowerPoint to share with you. I think seeing is believing with our system, but it's a little too big for me to demo here at my home office. So I'm going to show you some video content. Can everybody see my screen okay, Mr. Ara?
Yes, we are good.
All right, excellent. So we're going to start with the why. Why Evolv? What are we trying to do? So we are really trying to make the world a safer place for people to live, work, learn, and play. And obviously, as Vice President of Education, I'm focused more on the learning environments. I was a former assistant superintendent and really have a heart for children, 4 of my own, and happen to be the wife of a police sergeant. So multiple different perspectives on how we might keep schools safer, but always keeping that balance in mind of not only physical safety, but also emotional safety for kids. These are some of our more iconic customers, probably less interesting to all of you than our schools customers. So we are in over 1,000 schools nationwide, big, small, urban, suburban, rural. We do have some schools on reservations and some interesting types of environments to try and protect. It's really important for us to come in and partner with the district. As you know, many of you, most of our districts don't have necessarily robust security teams. Some of them do, and they're very lucky to have them, but some of them do not. And so I think it's important that we come in as a true partner to understand where they're at. I loved what Paul said about that. You could be anywhere along this security journey, the spectrum of where you're at in your schools. If our school buildings we go into and they're not quite locking their doors yet or doing some of the very basic best practices, they're probably not ready for weapons detection. And so we talk a lot about the safety balance I had mentioned in schools, really feeling safe to be safe, but making sure that what we're doing has significant impact on the actual security ecosystem. And so we do weapons detection. And when you think of weapons detection, I think a lot of individuals think immediately of metal detection, right? And metal detection, historically, speaking for myself, doesn't feel very good to walk through a metal detector. We all carry, pretty common metal on us every day, keys, phones, belts, things like that. And what I've noticed in a lot of schools that I've been able to visit is that when they have metal detection in place, it typically takes a very long time to get those students into they usually have only a few points of entry, which is great, but then you have a long line of students waiting to come through. And inevitably, what ends up happening, and I've seen many times, is you see the security operator finally say, the bell goes off, we got to get butts in seats. Come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. And kids know that if you come in late to school or you come in at the end of the pack, you're going to just get waved in and you're probably not going to go through that sort of TSA-like stringent security process. And we actually have some reports of students who aren't coming to first hour across the country to avoid that security screening. So we don't want school to feel that way. I'm familiar with some of the different research that's out there about metal detection, but we do want to provide that level of safety and security to keep firearms, explosive devices, and many large knives out of our buildings. And so what do we do? So finally, concealed weapons detection. Evolv has, this is our Generation 2 Express system. You've seen it probably at many iconic venues, but like I said, over 1,000 schools. And what it's doing, it's creating a field that as you walk through, it's going to be using artificial intelligence and sensor technology to determine, number one, do you have metal? Number two, what shape? And then what density is that metal? And so when we're looking at the shapes and the density of the metal, it's able to discern frequently between those everyday items. We've taught it many different signatures of phones, keys, and everyday items that are metallic versus those that may be threatening or harmful, parts or pieces of weapons. As you can see, those are our systems and people sort of quickly flowing through them on the right there versus a more historic metal detector system there in this particular arena. A much quicker, more seamless process. But again, this isn't a school, so I did want to show you more so what it looks like in a school. As you can see, there's green lights up there on the top of the system. If it detects a weapon, it's going to turn red. And I think this here is really the secret sauce. This is the most important part, is that we're providing an image with that red bounding box there. What does that allow for? That allows a security operator to be able to say, that is where I need to search. So kids are bringing in all of this clutter to school. Instead of saying, okay, let me check your purse, let me check your pockets, let me check your backpack, we're only going to need to search with a pinpointed integrity, that box right there, that section right there for a weapon. Much quicker, and again, a higher level of integrity in those searches. And in this instance, this individual does have a weapon where there was a box. Again, in our schools, our kids are walking through. Now, what you do notice in this video, some of these students are taking out their Chromebook or have a Chromebook or sometimes binders with the thick metal spine. Those can create additional, I want to call it interference or noise for the system, because parts of those do look like some components of certain weapons. And so over time, we listened to our schools, we've been working with our schools, and we just recently came out with a new product that I'm excited to share with you. And that is, let me get to it, folks. I know we're in a hurry here on this one. Sorry about that. That is the concealed weapons detection. So Evolv Expedite. This is a built from the ground up, a solution really looking to use X-ray technology along with artificial intelligence to look at bag screening in particular. Why is this important in a school? I just said kids bring a lot of clutter into school. They do bring some metallic items that can cause not only the express system, but many of our competitors and everyday metal detectors issues as well because of the metallic components. And we want them to have this seamless entry into school. So this is what a perfect scenario would look like for us, an Evolv Express system alongside an Evolv Expedite, as you see here. And let's see what that looks like. We're looking at high throughput. How quickly can the kids get into school safely? That's really what we're looking at. Goes on the belt. The belt is green, the same green red light technology. And that belt is moving incredibly fast. Now here we go. This particular bag had something in it that appeared threatening to the system. So this was not a human being interpreting an image of X-ray technology. This is the artificial intelligence that has been trained and saying there's something in this bag that is threatening. Here's an operator going to look inside the bag. At that point, oops, sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. At that point, they are provided with that image there that you see. And so you can see on the right-hand side, pretty easily, there's a weapon there, but it allows for them to have more information when they're doing that search. But unlike, some of our other places that use X-ray technology where you see the individuals operating having to discern what is and what is not a weapon based on the image, the AI, once again, is doing that for the individual, and they're provided with this image as an additional piece of information when they are already checking the bag. And here's what we can look like in a school. One of our school settings, kids walking right through the express with the expedite right next door there. What we're trying to do is minimize the invasion of privacy. We're trying to restore dignity as our kids are going into our schools while still maintaining that safety balance and trying to create a safer environment. And so really, I feel that's my job here, is to put that lens. Is this technology good for kids? Is this good for teachers? Is this good for learning and really getting back to the business of teaching and learning again in our schools? We do have some other solutions, but I know we don't have time to get into all of those today. I believe I only have a few more moments with you. But really, something I did want to mention on this call, because many of you are familiar with our technology or have heard of it before, we have made it more accessible to schools. So if you are familiar with older pricing, I think it's really important to get an updated quote and to get newer information. As the system has gotten smarter over time, and as we have gotten better as a business, we've been able to make this more affordable for schools. So I really wanted to mention that on today's call. And in this entire safer system, I mentioned two of our solutions here today. We also have a brandished weapon solution that can go as a software on your cameras, and that's in conjunction with OmniAlerts technology, visual gun detection. And we also have a personal safety app called EVA. So those are some other things to look for in the marketplace. But again, I recognize we don't have time to do that today. And so I will open it up to questions.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Well, the very first question, and this has come up several times, is, how is this different than your typical metal detector? Is it the same thing? I know you touched upon it briefly, but how is it different?
Yeah. So using that artificial intelligence, again, it's been taught many different signatures of many different everyday metallic items that your archaic metal detectors, they just beep, this nondescript beep on anything metal, right? And we talked about some of the bias that can creep into those security procedures, because what ends up happening when you are waving those kids in with that high alert rate on a metal detector is that eventually you're going to stop only those students that you perceive as having a potential for having a weapon. So what I'm saying is if multiple people are coming in the door and you're waving them in and waving them in, who are you going to stop if all of them are alerting? Now, I used to be a user of this system, a customer of Evolv before I came to the company. And I recall a female student asking me one day, why did you stop me and not my friend? Well, it was a great teachable moment for me as a former educator to take her over to the tablet and show her the image and say something, in your right side of your bag there alerted the system. Let's check it out and see what it is. The system doesn't see people. It doesn't see faces. It's looking at shapes and it's looking at things, and it's looking for those things that can cause a great amount of harm in a short amount of time in our schools.
And that you mentioned faces, and is there any facial recognition going on with the software? Anytime you mention AI and detections, that comes up.
I'm really glad you asked that, because that can be kind of like a two-letter word in a school, right? But our system does have open API to integrate with other technologies, which we talked about before, comprehensive safety planning. That's fantastic. We do not use that technology with facial recognition right now in schools. Typically, that would be the end user's decision, but we do not, as a company, provide any sort of facial recognition technology. We are familiar with some of our different stadiums, for example, using this solution and connecting to that face as your ticket type technology, things like that. But to my knowledge, we're not doing that in any schools, and that would be the end user's decision.
Now, Jill, we have in the Zero Now community, we have, both K through 12 and also higher education. And obviously in K through 12, you typically have a single point of entry for the entire school, and you would set up an express system at the entry. But when it comes to a college campus, do you have any guidance on are there certain spots of the campus that should be focused on initially? Because obviously, I imagine it'd be quite costly to install like every single building in the entire campus.
Yeah, great question. So again, we have that suite of different products. I think for most of our college campuses, with the number of cameras that are on campus, really the brandished or visual gun detection product is probably a better suited fit for them. And then using the Express and potentially the Expedite at those really high throughput places. So I'm thinking, stadiums for one, and maybe arenas as they're having basketball and other types of sporting events that draw a large crowd. And those places where the threat landscape allows itself to have a single point of entry, maybe the media center, maybe some intramural buildings and things like that. But we do work with safety teams across the country in different colleges to try and look at how could we fit into their plan. Another great win for us in our suite for colleges would be our personal safety app. A lot of interest right now in how do our students walk around campus and have a live agent with them, helping them to be sure that they get safely from point A to point B on campus. So that's another solution for schools.
And last question, and thank you for sharing the background and everything. Is so when it comes to both the new products, Expedite and Express, what type of staffing is required? Do you need to have 10 people working the door? Is it a one-person job? I mean, what do you recommend? Because that's obviously a consideration that folks typically have.
Certainly. So with the Express system, with the tablet, we typically have 2 individuals for a single lane system. The one individual is really more of a greeter, looking at that tablet with an eyes up security approach, looking for a green or red light, like we showed in one of the videos, right? And actually using that opportunity to connect with kids. Getting back to, again, teaching and learning and what we know is good for children. Really, the number one way to avert a violent incident found by the U.S. Secret Service in 2019 was to have a single trusting adult relationship. So we connect to that concept at that front door. You're making eye contact. Good morning. It's great to see you. Maybe you notice some other things, like is that student wearing the same outfit 2 or 3 days in a row? Are there other, cues that you can notice as they're walking into the school building? In addition to, if that red alert goes off, you can actually send that student to secondary search. At secondary search, we typically have an individual there looking, doing that pinpointed search and looking for a potential threat. So for a single lane system, and that's including, if you have the Expedite alongside, we're looking at probably 2 to 3 individuals, depending on the number of students. If a dual lane, we would probably go up to 4 or 5 individuals based on, certain concept of operations and how many doors are open.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that because, within the Zero Now community, we always talk about, technology are tools of the trade, right? But there are so many things that are intangible that really help when it comes to preventing harm, either self-harm or harming others. And that is the cultural aspects, building those relationships with students. And, all too often, folks think, well, or there's a narrative that you just need technology and that will solve all your issues. No, the technology is a tool to help people do their jobs more effectively and build those connections. And so I'm very glad that you brought that up because that is such a critical aspect that you don't hear too often.
Yeah. More often it's the people and the processes that support that technology that really, help to prevent these tragedies. Thank you for mentioning that.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Jill. We appreciate it. And with that, we have our third and final presenter today. It's Kelly Moore, the one and only Kelly Moore from CrisisGo. Kelly, are you there? There you are.
I am here, and thank God I'm the only one.
There we go. Kelly, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Kelly Moore. I'm the senior school safety specialist for CrisisGo. My background's 34 years in law enforcement, a couple years as a school safety director, all in Southern California. I am currently living out of Virginia right now. So there you have it. So let me talk a little bit about CrisisGo and what we do. We're a unified school safety communications and emergency management platform. And we've been around for a little bit more than 11 years, getting close to 12 years here. And I'm having issues with my slides right now. Isn't this going to be fun?
Okay. Is it advancing or is it?
Yeah, it's not. There it goes.
There we go.
So we're an all hazards app. We started by digitizing our emergency operations plans and having the ability for everyone to have that on their phone. And as we progressed and evolved and got input from our customers, we advanced into what I believe is one of the most advanced emergency communications platform out there today. These are a couple of reasons why CrisisGo. We partner with I Love You Guys and their standard response protocols. We use all of their stuff in our applications. And we also advocate for the standard reunification method and have a technology solution for that as well. Part of our platform has the ability, and we integrate with many people like Jill and Paul integrate. We integrate as well, but most of our solutions are built in-house so that we know that they all work together. The important thing that we like to remind people of is an emergency isn't just the response to that emergency. Nowadays, we have a big trend into states adopting the panic button solution, Alyssa's Law states. And while that's a great solution, once you have an emergency happening, we like to start long before that, the sooner the better, and communicate that. And we don't want to wait till, shots are being fired. We want to, as soon as possible, alert people and bring them into the mix. And here we can bring everyone into the mix from start to finish, from that first threat being discovered. We can help with managing threat assessments. We can look at bringing in all of your threat assessment teams. We can then escalate to law enforcement. And if something happens before we're managing that, or while we're trying to manage that threat, something happens, then we can escalate that to a lockdown. We can do weather events and so forth, like they're seeing in Florida and the Southeast today. But we bring in the entire safety community together. So we have a solution for everybody. We have panic buttons. We have a wearable mounted panic buttons, wearable panic buttons. We have smartwatches, radios. Our bread and butter is on the phone app so that everyone has it on their phone. And we can also send everything to desktop and so forth and connect immediately with the PSAPs. And with a brand new partner of ours, Rapid Deploy, we can send a link directly to your dispatchers, your PSAPs, public safety answering centers, and we can send them the link so that they know exactly what's happening at the school. So they have somebody who's working through that problem with you. When an emergency happens, you have to have the receiver of that information has to be able to look at it from where they're at, whether it's on their phone, whether it's on their watch, whether it's on a desktop. We can integrate, and we have integrated with PA systems, strobes, digital displays, and so forth. But they need to get the information. There's two things that people really want to know in an emergency. The first is what is happening, and the second is what you want them to do. And, static panic buttons only give them one piece of that advice. and that is what you want them to do. Now, I do think that's the most important, but what is happening and how do you communicate with them back and forth? What's happening? What do they need? Can you confirm that they're okay? Those types of things are important for us to know as emergency managers. And we understand as a company that the initial response to an emergency is just a very small portion of that emergency. At some point, you're going to have hours or days of trying to manage these emergencies. And I know we have people in our audience who have experienced active violence situations. I've been on 2 of them, and that was over in a very short period of time. A long one is 8 to 10 minutes. And what we do after that is important. How do we get those who are injured to the hospital? How do we communicate what we want people to do? How do we communicate with law enforcement and fire departments? How do we do that? Part of that is through the command, our smart EOC, smart emergency operations command, where we can hand over the incident to law enforcement from the same information that we started and we generated from as the initial alert. We partner, like we said, with GeoComm for mapping, CRG for mapping, Zero Eyes for gun and shot detection, and many of the access controls and video cameras. That way, if you're using our system, you can click on the icon and it can bring it up and you can see what's happening. And, you know, we like to say we want all of our first responders to have that initial, as they're responding, they want to have that information. The fact of the matter is they're focused on addressing the threat, whatever that threat is. They're trying to move through it, seeing indicators, seeing where people are coming from, where they're pointing, where the report of the weapon is happening, and so forth. They're focused on getting there as quickly as possible. They don't have time to look at their phone. They don't have time to look at and read displays. But if we give this information to dispatch, dispatch can relay that in their on their radios, and they can sort of guide them through, because they're going to be working off the same maps, the same frequencies and everything's going to move very quickly and smooth and seamlessly. We have tip lines. So a lot of states have their own tip lines, but we've found historically, and we're getting more and more of our customers requesting our tip line, because the states are very slow to get the tips to the individual schools, and they don't get the data that they need to really manage the behaviors and the going-ons at the campus level. Here you can aggregate all of the data. You can see on your campus where things are occurring. You can see if one school has more incidences of bullying than another. Maybe you want to examine that a little bit and delve into that a little bit deeper. So we work through it. As we work through managing all of these systems, and we looked at maps and how are maps being used. And so now we have interaction, we have intelligent maps going on where we can look at just your floor plan, and that's great. But what we really want to do is look at the best here, where we're putting our data on the map, where we're putting the incident on the map, where we're putting escape routes, where we're putting danger zones, maybe triage areas, casualty collection points, all of those things that your incident management needs on the map, so that they can communicate in almost real time what is exactly happening. They can see where their gaps are. Maybe a perimeter needs to be set up, or what have you there. As we start looking at risks and receiving reports. We have to look at where we are looking at how do we manage risk. And with our dashboard, we can look at your entire district and see where things might have a need for attention, and you can go through there. We have the ability to push out safety announcements. I'm going to run through these pretty quick now. You get the gist of the platform, but we can push out notifications. Law enforcement can push out notifications and lock your school down in certain circumstances. So we have that ability to, as soon as we, as law enforcement, determine a threat or made aware of a threat, we can push that out. One of the biggest things when we talk about threat assessments and threat management is the management. When we talk about looking at the complexity of a thorough assessment and what you're going to do with that student or teacher in some cases, what you're going to do with them over a long period of time, that can be overwhelming. So you need a system which you can manage those things. Again, this is that dashboard for that particular aspect of our platform. And we get into where now we're looking at asset management and how up to date are our emergency operations plans. Facilities, do they need work, and can we create a workflow for that and make sure that those assets are taken care of? And then the last thing I'm really going to put in here, there's two things actually. First of all, there's a new feature of ours. It's a visitor management where we allow for people to check in, our visitors to check in, our substitute teachers to check in, our itinerant workers, and contractors and those people who need access to our buildings, but not on a daily basis, one-offs or on a short term, but they get brought into our emergency notification. So now we can manage them while they're on our campus, even in a temporary manner. This is an example of our reunification. It follows the I Love You Guys Foundation or your own, whatever you use. We typically go with the I Love You Guys, but we can customize the terminology for you if you use something different. We found that this is the easiest one for us, and most of our customers enjoy this. So with that, that's CrisisGo in a nutshell. All right.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. I just have a few questions here.
Sure.
First, so if you wouldn't mind just explaining, so is CrisisGo, is it more of a software-based solution? Is it installed on a local server? Is it cloud-based? Is it hardware-based?
The meat and potatoes of the system is a cloud-based. It's not on a local server. We have several. We go through AWS, so we have some backup servers, and we use them as our primary host, I guess is the right term there.
Mm-hmm.
But we do sell software when we start talking about panic buttons and different devices, or we partner with people and resell like our radio systems through Ciata Mobile and for the buses and so forth. So we look at safety teams and those communications. We look at events and the communications and the safety needs for event planning and event security. So oftentimes we have different people who are assigned to different events. So having like a pack of radios that are eligible to be used for that event is a good solution for us.
And so, I mean, obviously the platform is very broad and covers a number of different aspects with school safety. What is a typical entry point for a school or school district with CrisisGo?
So typically, it's we call it the safety response. It's our foundational platform, and that's the alerting, the student accountability, rostering, teacher check-in, and messaging back and forth that allows for you to press an alert, depending on what the emergency is, and then that can also escalate to your district and law enforcement, fire, pretty much hospitals, whoever you designate, it can escalate to those. So it does comply with Alyssa's law, and it does attach to our maps. So you have indoor location services that are applied to that through that alert.
And what is the learning curve? Is there the training process, and who typically is the administrator of this in a district? Is it more on the IT side, safety director? Where do you see that?
So it depends on the district. They run the gamut. Sometimes they split that. The IT manages the users and the students through their SIS, their Student Information Center, and then the actual training for the application itself is handled by the safety team, the safety director. And the learning curve is pretty simple, especially if you understand what you're supposed to do at the beginning. I think it was Jill who brought up, and technology isn't going to solve your problem for you. Technology is going to help you manage your problem and expedite things that you have to do and timestamp and do all of that stuff. It's not going to save you. It's not like the Staples that's a big red button. I'm done. I pressed the button. So you have to understand what you need to do in what I say a manual. So you need to know what you have to do in a lockdown or an evacuation or what have you. You have to know what that is. But in order to get everyone notified, all you have to do is press that button. And if you understand that, that's easy to do.
Exactly, the tools of the trade. And Kelly, we're out of time, but I just wanted to thank you and Paul and Jill and I think all of you mentioned some about events. Our next Zero Now program is a week from today. It's about ensuring safety at school events, and we've got a great group of guest panelists for that. But we'll be talking about what preparations do you need, what protocols and what technology do you need when securing events. So we'll see you all next Tuesday, and this video will be available online a week from today. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Jill, and thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Ara.